Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to talk to you about herbs we can use to support fever. Hi, my name's Corinne, and here at Spirea, I share videos that weave together plant wisdom, holistic health, self-sufficiency with just a dash of magic. If this sounds interesting to you, I'd love for you to stick around. Well, I am out here this morning trying to take in the sunrise. It's really cloudy. We're expecting a pretty severe thunderstorm, which has been our status quo for summer, even though it's the equinox. So we are now transitioning into fall, but we've just gotten buckets and buckets of rain. And it's been a little bit since I have filmed a video for YouTube. This is a challenging time of year, and I'm sure a lot of you are feeling it too, this time of transition. Kiddos heading back to school, and we of course are still producing in the garden. We haven't had our first hard frost yet, so we had potatoes to harvest, we have apples coming in on some trees, we still have tomatoes and beans coming in every day, raspberries too. And so on top of, our regular garden, we of course have been, as you can see over my shoulder, stacking firewood. So that's made for kind of a busy time. But I wanted to take the time to talk about herbs for fever. And first, we'll start with a disclaimer. Of course, nothing that you are sharing or I am sharing on here today is meant to be interpreted as specific medical advice for any conditions or for the treatment of any illnesses or conditions. This is just information for you to then take to your healthcare practitioner of choice or continue to do research on your own. But I wanted to talk about this because there's some really interesting things that are happening sort of in the external world. One of them, of course, is the removal of one of the most common ways that families treat fever, especially in children, and that's Tylenol. And I don't know what it's like where you are. Let me know where you're watching this in the world and what the situation is like for you. But here, families can't find it on shelves. It's been pulled from some places. There's low shortage. And now we're actually starting to get some very interesting new studies coming out telling us that Tylenol is dangerous, right? And so, we're starting to examine these over-the-counter ways that most people have relied upon as being the method for treating fevers. And suddenly that's taken away. And I can feel collectively this feeling of disempowerment, confusion, and not really knowing what to do. And because a lot of what I like to term like the old ways have been forgotten, we don't know how to manage fever in our little ones. And that's, like I said, I really wanted to come on here and just kind of put in my 2 cents worth for what it's worth. Here in Canada, they got rid of the penny, so 2 cents pretty much downgrades you to nothing. But hopefully you'll still find the information in this video useful. So I think the first thing I want to talk about are the mechanisms of fever and why the body has fever in the first place. Now, I'm only going to do a really brief overview. If what you want is more nitty-gritty, I want to learn all about the immune system, I want to learn how to use herbs on a deeper level, I invite you to check out my monthly membership platform called Weavers of Plant Wisdom. We're actually doing an entire module for the rest of September into October on the immune system. But I want to talk about the fact that fever serves a purpose in the body. It's actually one of the immune system's way of dealing with what we call foreign invaders, right? Bacteria, viruses, things that get into our system that aren't supposed to be there. And what fever does is it increases the metabolic rate of the body so that the body is better able to fight off the foreign invader. It does this through increasing temperature, increasing respiratory rate so we can get more oxygen to places where it needs to go. Sometimes blood pressure will go up. And so essentially it's speeding up the body, right? And heating up the body to make it an inhospitable environment for pathogens. This is really important to think about when we suppress fever, because fever does serve a purpose. And I know I know you feel like garbage when you have one, and I get that. And I have empathy for that. Trust me, I've had many a fever in my lifetime, but it serves a purpose. And often when we suppress fever, one, we've lost one of the symptoms that tells us what's going on in the body and how bad things are. And two, the fever can't do its job, which is to fight off the pathogens. So you end up being sicker longer. So there's something I just kind of want to drop into your field. Again, do your own research. Nothing I'm sharing here today is gospel, nor nothing I'm sharing here today is meant to be interpreted as medical advice. So when we want to use herbs to support fever, I'm actually using the word support because we don't suppress. The category of herbs I'm talking about today is febrifuge, and I'm going to make sure it's really loud out here. I do have my mic on, but hopefully you guys can still hear me. I'm going to write that on the bottom, febrifuge, so you guys can head on off to the Google machine and start looking that up, right? And looking up what are our febrifuge herbs. I will show you a few today and some of my favorites that I love. But fever herbs work a little bit differently because they modulate fever, meaning that they're going to bring that fever into what we would call a productive range. And the productive range is that the temperature isn't too high, because when our temperature gets too high, that's when we get scared, right guys? That's when it's like febrile seizures. I'm worried about damage in the body. But also on the flip side of that, when fever is too low, you feel like a sack of garbage, but it's not doing the work you need it to do. So fever herbs help to modulate, meaning it's going to bring it into a productive range. I have seen them work to lower fever when it gets too high, when it gets out of control. That inflammatory response is like, ugh, right? I'm a little nervous here. And so that's how they work. So if we expect them to work like pharmaceuticals, they're not going to work that way. So I wanted to talk about that too. Now, my hope is that I'm going to have an accompanying blog post at some point. I am teaching one more time this week, so it may come up if you're watching this like right when I put it out. Give me a couple days, come back, and then I'll go through the list of some of my favorite fever herbs. So because I have to be really careful with navigating medical advice, I can't tell you how to take them, meaning like dosages. I can tell you what herbs to look into. I can tell you that when we're treating fever and viruses, we're treating acute stages. So you start looking into dosages for acute illnesses, not chronic, right? They are different. They're normally in higher amounts and higher frequency. In terms of how to take these, ideally, in a perfect world, if we could go back in time, we'd make tincture from a lot of the herbs I'm going to show you or talk about briefly this morning. But since we can't do that, there's nothing wrong with getting dried herbs. Now I want you, if you're in Canada specifically, you can check out Harmonic Arts. I get almost all of my bulk herbs from them. Absolutely love those guys. So I am an affiliate, but you can look below and like in the description, and I'll put a link to how to buy bulk herbs so you can make tea. And what's really nice is a lot of our fever herbs are from the mint family, so they actually taste really good too. So I'm going to quickly turn the camera around to show you some of the fever herbs I still have in my garden right now that haven't quite died yet, that I would, harvest to dry, or maybe, make a tincture from if the herb still looks like it has a decent amount of vitality and health to it. All right, so I'm feeling super lazy this morning. I do not have the gimbal, so just forgive me if things look a little bouncy. This is Hysop, or Hysop, depending on how you pronounce it, Hysopus officinalis. This is a fantastic plant to get to know. And mine, as you can see, let's see if I can zoom in there, it's starting to look a little brown, right? There it is, right? So this is not, it's nearing the end of its life cycle. And these are first year plants for me, so I really wanted to give them a chance to to get really well established before I go harvesting them. But this is one of my favorite plants to have around for, cold and flu season, because it's also an amazing respiratory herb. All right, and here's another one. Now, pay mind that it is September 21st, so a lot of my plants are nearing the end of their life cycle, but at least I have a few to show you. This is Roman chamomile. You can also use German chamomile. In my growing zone, Roman is a perennial. Will come back every year. German is an annual, so I do have to plant it. But have you noticed that so far both plants I've shown you taste really good? And that's a key thing for when we want to get fever herbs into kids, for sure. So you've got your chamomiles, and another febrifuge is lavender. And it's amazing, there's actually still some lavender blossoms on this plant. So here's another one for your arsenal to think about. And the last two that I can physically show you that I know for sure I still have on my property. First, we have lemon balm here. And if you take a look, my lemon balm's been infiltrated by chickweed. It's everywhere. I've been meaning to pull it out and make pesto from it. I pretty much make pesto from everything. Let me know the herbs you use to make pesto. But lemon balm, again, this is actually one of my favorite febrifuges. It works very well and it tastes really good. And so for me, like if I were drying this for tea, I would still take this now because it's really past its flowering point. I wouldn't make tincture from it, but I would make an oxymel. Check out my videos on oxymels. I would definitely, as long as the plant still looks healthy and vibrant. And over here we have peppermint, Menthochross piperita. Both of these plants are plants that we have covered in great detail in Weavers of Plant Wisdom. I would also use this peppermint. Now, because as you can see here, it is long past its flowering period, I would not be making tincture at this point. But in a pinch, I would certainly make an oxymel or even dry some for tea. There's one more I want to draw your attention to. Let's get the leaf off of it there. Okay. And this is ground ivy. A lot of people call it creeping Charlie. I have a video on Charlie. Everybody hates Charlie because he creeps. But there is a lot of really great reasons to get to know this plant. One, it pretty much grows everywhere. Like, let me know in the comments, do you have ground ivy growing where you live? Probably in places you don't want it. But here's an example of another great herb in the mint family that is a febrifuge. So I've only shown you a small handful of some of the plants that we can grow in our gardens and usually easily find in terms of dried supply or even tincture if you wanted to buy. There's so many more. Bee balm, if you grow bee balm, great fever herb. Oregano is another really good one. St. John's wort, yarrow, so many plants that we can add to our perennial gardens for their beauty and color, as well as cultivate for medicine. Like I said, give me a few days. I'll do a blog post on this too, so you can have a more comprehensive list of febrifuges. But even if you just have some of these, I do highly recommend oxymels. They're really, really tasty. I've got a few videos on them, so I'll make sure I link at least one or two throughout this video, but I have them on spruce tips, which again would be another really good plant to have around during cold, flu, fever season. But I regularly make a mint oxymel with spearmint, peppermint, lemon balm, Hysop, and if I have some still in bloom at that time, I've even added in some bee balm. And then you do a mixture of apple cider vinegar and honey as your extraction medium. Tastes really good, so it's easy to get into kids. Plus, you're already using all of these beautiful aromatic plants. So, like I said, I really only touched on a few. There is a long, long list. Keep an eye out for that blog post. If this is the kind of stuff that lights you up, you want to learn more, you want to be empowered to take back your health, to treat your family, to learn the old ways, I do invite you to check out Weavers of Plant Wisdom, my monthly membership platform. If you have any questions about fever herbs that I'm able to answer, I cannot specifically answer any questions directly related to conditions or dosing. My government's got rules. So I'm trying to not get deplatformed while still give you as much information as possible. So drop those questions, or if you just have some comments, drop those below. And until next time, this is Corinne from Spirea Herbs, wishing you health and wellness.